I am the only daughter of the general's household. When it came time to choose a husband, my father said, "My daughter is beautiful, but her body is frail and weak. She can't carry a thing on her shoulders, nor lift anything with her hands." My mother said, "My daughter's character is timid and weak, easily pushed around and molded, and she's easily swayed, a pushover." My grandmother said, "Whoever marries her not only gets a lavish dowry, but can also inherit the general's estate." The servants worried. "Miss, won't she just be bullied by her husband's family?" So, all the noble families in the capital wanted to marry this rich, beautiful, well-connected good-for-nothing. But the people of the general's household were lying. The only daughter of the general who protects the nation, graceful and dignified, gentle and virtuous, truly a model for noble ladies in the capital. That was the first thing His Majesty said after meeting me. As soon as those words were spoken, the atmosphere at the banquet instantly fell silent. Everyone was sizing up the girl sitting next to my father, her eyes sparkling brightly. But what they didn't know was, the reason I didn't say a word was entirely because my mother was pinching my inner thigh. She was silently warning me, "If you dare utter a single word, I'll burn all your romance novels." Those were all out of print, adults-only editions. I gritted my teeth, enduring the pain in my thigh. The sparkle in my eyes was nothing but tears of restraint. And my father, hearing His Majesty's praise, puffed out his chest and spoke eloquently, bragging about how he raised me to be a lady proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. A master of all the arts. My mother chimed in on everything, saying, "I've been timid since childhood, cowardly and shy. We only have this one daughter. If she's left alone and helpless after we're gone, what will become of her?" As soon as my mother finished, she and my father hugged and cried. To anyone watching, they were just ordinary parents worried about their daughter's future. Their heartfelt sobs moved even the usually cold-hearted royalty and nobility, filling them with empathy. But they forgot, this couple were the ones who killed without blinking on the battlefield, the dreaded duo that made enemy troops tremble in fear. Is there a single word of truth coming out of their mouths? His Majesty looked at the weeping pair, then at me, who kept my head bowed. He spoke up, "Since you're so worried, why not leave her in the capital? I'll personally find her a good husband." "How about that?" my father asked. "Really? Your Majesty will personally look?" His Majesty nodded. "As long as Your Majesty arranges a marriage for my daughter, I'll return the tiger tally right now. I'll stay in the capital and retire." After my father finished speaking, he directly shoved the tiger tally into His Majesty's hand. As if afraid the other would change his mind, he reiterated, "Your Majesty must promise to arrange my daughter's marriage." Everything happened too suddenly. Everyone stared at the tiger tally in His Majesty's hand, stunned. Everyone thought my father's achievements overshadowed the Emperor's authority, and he'd never willingly return the tally. Even His Majesty only intended to keep me, his only daughter, in the capital as a hostage, to keep my father in check. But who would have thought my father would just lay down his arms like that? His one and only condition was to arrange a marriage for his daughter. To arrange a marriage for his daughter, who was as shy as a violet. That was it. His Majesty cautiously asked the general what kind of husband he wanted for her. My parents exchanged a glance and shook their heads in unison. No requirements. Moreover, for the wedding, our family would provide a dowry procession stretching 20 miles, with 10,000 chests of gifts. My mother added, "And we have no male heir. Our family line ends with her." These terms not only tempted every noble family present, but even His Majesty on the throne couldn't help but feel stirred. If he weren't 73 and over the hill, he might have wanted to marry me himself. From then on, every noble family in the capital began carefully considering the eligible young men in their clans. The second day after returning to the capital, the entrance to the general's estate was jammed with all sorts of young masters. My matchmaking meetings had officially begun. As I was leaving, my father shouted after me in a booming voice, "Don't talk too loud. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't scare anyone." The young masters at the gate chorused in reply, "We'll be very gentle, my father. I was born in the desert and raised on the frontier. When my parents returned to the capital for reports before, I never came with them." Throughout the entire capital, people only knew the mighty general had an only daughter. The world assumed my parents cherished me like a precious pearl. Seeing me today, they realized she truly is a beauty that seems to have descended from the heavens, rarely seen in the mortal world. The man across from me was the last suitor of the day. He was Fu Yunzheng, grandson of the Minister of Rights. This guy had been showing off his literary flair in front of me for a full hour. I really couldn't sit still any longer. Recalling the timid heroines from storybooks, I spoke up shyly, "The cheat sheet in your palm is smudging." He froze for a moment, then realized I'd caught him. Embarrassed at being caught cheating, he shrieked and covered his face with his hands, smearing ink all over it. I couldn't help but laugh. Across from me, Fu Yunsheng peeked through his fingers. As our eyes met, the tips of his ears turned bright red. The next instant, as if he'd stepped on a mouse's tail, he shot to his feet. He muttered something about going to wash up and ran off. This shy, boyish demeanor was a kind of delicate charm I'd never seen on the frontier. By the time we left the tea house, it was evening. The night breeze was cool. Fu Yunxiang took off his cloak and offered it to me. I looked at him, puzzled. He held it out for a while, seeing I wasn't moving. Finally, biting his lip, he draped it over my shoulders himself, his face flushed. He bowed his head reverently. On the exposed nape of his neck, a deep blush spread beneath his collar. Curious, I reached out and poked the skin there. My cool fingertip made Fu Yunxiang flinch involuntarily, then he looked up in surprise and met my gaze. Afraid he'd find me too forward, I whispered timidly, "You're so red there. I'm afraid you might have a fever." Perhaps my voice was too soft. The tall young man bent down to get closer. After hearing me clearly, a forced, composed smile bloomed on his flushed face. "You have to touch here to know if there's a fever." With that, he guided my hand to his smooth forehead. I wanted to pull away, but his hand held mine in place. Both my palm and the back of my hand felt his warmth. So it turns out the young men in the capital really are different from the rough guys at the border. After returning home, I went to my grandmother's courtyard. Besides my parents, many relatives were there. Seeing I was back, the whole family gathered around me, all chattering at once to ask about today's battlefield report. "How about my mother's nephew from the Ministry of Justice?" I shook my head. "Mama's boy." "What about that son from my father's side, the one from the Hugh family?" I shook my head. "Wife beater." "What about my grandmother's nephew from the Prime Minister's family?" I shook my head. "Dirty old man." The whole family wailed. "Not a single one?" I shook my head. "One worked out." "Who?" Everyone crowded closer to me, asking excitedly. "Fu Yunxiang, grandson of the Minister of Rights." As soon as I said that, the previously lively atmosphere instantly fell silent. My parents looked at the relatives, confused. Everyone exchanged glances for a good while. Finally, a distant cousin spoke up in a low voice to explain the reason. Because their family is a 3-in-1 package. I had been back in the capital for 3 days. The first day, I had an audience with the emperor. The second day, I went on blind dates. The third day, I received a marriage proposal. My parents were dumbfounded, looking at Minister Fu and Madame Fu, who had come in person first thing in the morning, and the entire courtyard full of betrothal gifts. Is shotgun marriage popular in the capital now? The matchmaker brought by the Fu family praised them to the heavens, saying, if I married into their family, I'd be falling into a pile of blessings. The Fu family will treat you like their own daughter. However, you lived at home before, you can live exactly the same way after marrying in. My eyes widened in delight. Really? However, I was at home, I can be the same after marrying? Can I really be myself? I stood up excitedly, just about to ask for more details, when my mother covered my mouth with her hand. She gritted her teeth and whispered in my ear, those romance novels are making me tell you to shut up. The matchmaker nodded vigorously. Of course. We are the most open-minded elders. We absolutely don't engage in that oppressive stuff. Her words sounded sincere, but I saw Madame Fu, her face stiff, glance at me, and then give an almost imperceptible shake of her head. My parents looked at me and asked, are you sure you want to marry him? I nodded. I want to be myself. My father sighed mournfully, can't you find someone reliable? His family is a 3-in-1 package. Before father could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Minister Fu, who had been silent until then. General Weiwu, that's not quite right. Our Fu family's conduct is most upright and honorable. How can you call it unreliable? My father ignored my winks and nudges, frowning slightly, and continued to challenge the Fu family, hoping they'd back down. If you want to marry my daughter, you must be faithful for life. Minister Fu nodded. Of course, my grandson is the most upright man, and he can withstand any test. He pointed casually at a maid behind me. Even if she were undressed and standing right in front of my grandson, he wouldn't even glance her way. If you don't believe me, bring her as part of the dowry to the Fu residence, and see if the Fu men will be corrupted. I turned to look at the maid. She pointed at TSK. The old man pointed to the prettiest one. I saw Madame Fu's face turn every color of the rainbow, shifting repeatedly. My father obviously noticed it too. With a dark expression, he asked me again, are you sure you want to marry him? I nodded, begging my parents to consent. My mother asked the Fu family again, are you sure you want to marry her? Absolutely, positively, and without a doubt. Although both I and the Fu family were firm, my parents still insisted that the two of us didn't know each other well enough and needed more time to get acquainted. After seeing off the Fu family, but before half a day had passed, the emperor's marriage decree arrived. My father sighed helplessly. Good advice is wasted on the stubborn. After this marriage, I'm afraid she'll suffer terribly. There's a problem with that statement. He didn't say who would suffer. In the blink of an eye, my wedding day arrived. Because of the general's mansion's unprecedented dowry, it caused a sensation throughout the capital. Everyone came to watch the spectacle of 20 miles of red dowry. With my veil on, I was led out of the house by my father himself. Before I boarded the sedan, my father gripped my hand and earnestly advised, if he does something wrong, you should be forgiving. Be patient and treat him well. If you really can't bear it, just look at his face. If you still can't bear it, Think about that dowry. It emptied my family's coffers. Considering all I've sacrificed, don't let him come back to complain to me. Father's words were heartfelt, and he gripped my hand with all his strength. It hurt so much I grimaced under the veil. Did you hear that? I was about to nod, when Fu Yunsheng answered happily and naively, yes, Dad. My father. The wedding night was truly beautiful. Fu Yunsheng looks like a delicate young master, but who would have thought that without clothes, his broad shoulders and narrow waist were truly captivating. The candles burned all night, so we both woke up late the next day. When serving tea to the Fu family elders, I was still yawning, feeling completely drained. In the main hall, Minister Fu sat in the seat of honor, and below him sat Fu Yunsheng's father, along with other relatives. Madame Fu and my mother-in-law, and the other women, were properly standing behind their men. The only empty chair in the hall was clearly prepared for Fu Yunsheng. Servants brought teacups, and I was helped by a maid to kneel on a cushion. I respectfully offered the tea, but I never expected. Minister Fu sat there motionless. Instead, the father-in-law beside him spoke up. Our Fu family is a century-old, influential clan. To serve tea, you must kneel for a full 2 hours. Your hands must not tremble, and you must not spill a drop, or you'll face the family discipline. I glanced at Fu Yunsheng, who was playing the coward, and calmly asked, I've never heard of such a rule. Before he could answer, Minister Fu slammed the table and roared, How dare you? Men are superior. How dare you question us? From now on, you will follow all the rules of our Fu family. I smirked. So what you said before, about letting me be myself after marrying in, was just a lie, huh? The father-in-law sneered. Of course, you can still be yourself. That timid, cowardly, weak, and useless self. After he finished, everyone burst into laughter. Fu Yunsheng tugged at my sleeve and whispered, Zhui, just kneel obediently for the 2 hours. Then hand over all your dowry to grandfather. Kowtow to him 3 times, and apologize. Then he won't be angry anymore. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Do I look like a pushover to you? Let me ask one more time. Can I be myself after marrying into the Fu family? Minister Fu nodded. Of course, our Fu family won't look down on you for being a good-for-nothing. I raised my hand and splashed the tea right in the old man's face. Before anyone could react, I proceeded to throw the remaining cups at every elder in the room. Finally, I smiled and asked, Tea served. Where are my gifts? The room fell silent. A moment later, Minister Fu's piercing shriek erupted. This is an outrage. Bring the family discipline. I eagerly awaited. Turns out it was just a cane. Compared to the spiked club my father used to beat me with, it was nothing. Minister Fu's once stern face now looked utterly vicious. He shook the cane in his hand. On your knees, he commanded. I sat in the chair meant for Fu Yunsheng, and didn't move. Minister Fu was furious. He roared for the servants to seize me. My mother-in-law, who had been silent, suddenly moved. Her voice trembling with fear and pity, she cautiously pleaded for me. This new bride looked so delicate. How could she withstand the family discipline? Besides, if the mighty general finds out. Before she could finish, the father-in-law slapped her to the ground. The master is setting the rules. A woman has no right to speak. Go kneel in the ancestral hall for a full day and night. After he spoke, 2 burly maids dragged her away. Minister Fu looked at his son with satisfaction. For hitting his wife, I glanced at Fu Yunsheng. He showed no reaction to his own mother's plight. He was used to it. I kicked him right then and there. You like setting rules, huh? Today, we'll show you the rules of this border beast. This nickname, Border Beast, was given to me by the people of the frontier, because when I was 5, I got into a biting fight with the neighbor's dog. At 8, I single-handedly took on the biggest bully in the alley. At 10, I chased hooligans down the street and pulled their pants down. At 13, with a pair of meteor hammers, I smashed in the skull of an enemy soldier who had sneaked into the city. At 15, I snuck into the military camp and, on the battlefield, strung up enemy heads like candied haws, and carried them to my father. That bloody scene made even many veteran soldiers vomit, yet I was the only one happily eating the pitaya we had seized. TSK. So sweet. Not until I turned 16 and came of age did my father arrange blind dates for me, but they all failed. He couldn't accept it for a while, burying himself in my mother's arms and crying his heart out. My daughter is pure muscle, so beautiful. And there's not a single weapon she can't handle, so reliable. How could they not fancy her? Boo-hoo. It took my father 2 years to finally accept fate and stop tormenting the men of the frontier. The day our whole family returned to the capital, the entire frontier was in an uproar. The people spontaneously gathered to see us off, all shedding mixed tears. On one hand, they couldn't bear to part with my parents. On the other, they never wanted to see me again. Many people tightly grasped my father's hands and earnestly urged, "Great General, you must find your daughter a son-in-law from the capital." Now, I've finally entered the Fu family. The deed is done. I no longer have to pretend to be harmless and weak. Thinking of this, I flashed a bright smile, stepped on Fu Yunjing's back, and snatched the family discipline rod from Minister Fu's hand. I pointed it back at him. Old fart, what are you gonna do about it? Wretch. Minister Fu clutched his chest, fainted from anger, yet still managed to reach out a trembling hand to point at me. My father-in-law and Madame Fu hurriedly helped him sit in a chair. For a moment, the room was in chaos. Everyone rushed forward, crowding around old Fart Fu, except for me and the Fu Yunjing under my foot. Old Fart Fu trembled. Medicine. Madame Fu quickly took out a porcelain bottle from her robe, poured out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth, considerately gave him several sips of tea, and gently patted his back to help him breathe. After a moment, the old fart's breathing evened out. He immediately shoved the Madame Fu who was attending to him, knocking her to the ground. The pain made her frown and curl up on the ground, yet she didn't dare make a sound. Meanwhile, old Fart Fu pushed through the crowd and pointed at me, cursing, "Wretch, all that weakness and cowardice from before was just an act. Your father still calls himself the mighty general, yet he stoops to such a disgraceful act as marriage fraud. It's utterly contemptible and disgusting." I shrugged nonchalantly. So what? What can you do? These aristocratic families, used to life in the capital, have always lived a life of outward splendor, mouthing empty words of virtue and morality. They've never seen a scoundrel like me. Old man Fu was left speechless. Then he glanced at Fu Yunsheng, who was still under my foot. "How dare you trample your own man underfoot? You will slap yourself 100 times as punishment, or I will expose your wicked deeds to the world. Let everyone know your family committed marriage fraud, and bring utter shame upon your household." With that, he ordered the servants outside the room to go out and spread word of my misdeeds. Under his smug gaze, I threw my arm back with force. The Fu family discipline cane in my hand blocked the servant's path, embedding itself 2 inches deep into the main gate. The tea-serving ceremony ended in the shock of being unable to retrieve the cane. I dragged Fu Yunsheng back to my courtyard. Before I could even speak, he glared at me furiously. "Shen Jiwei, how dare you speak to grandfather like that? He was teaching you propriety for your own good. How can you be so ungrateful? How will you ever be a proper daughter-in-law of the Fu family? How will you honor your in-laws, serve your husband, and raise your children? We men are exhausted from our official duties outside. While you enjoy the wealth and status the Fu family provides, you must also contribute. You must devote yourself to managing the affairs of this household. Do you understand?" I was stunned by his shameless words. Seeing my silence, Fu Yunjing thought I was finally afraid. He straightened his back even more. Issuing a condescending order, he said, "Go to the Wenyuan Pavilion and arrange a lavish feast. Apologize to grandfather and father at dinner." I smirked coldly. Should I prepare a fine wine as well? Fu Yunjing thought I was yielding. With a look that said I was finally learning, he replied, "Of course. And buy each of them a luminous pearl from the lake. Only then will it show the sincerity of your apology." His smug tone and expression were really asking for a punch. I was about to raise my hand when my maid, Yunshui, quietly grabbed my sleeve. She whispered in my ear, "Miss, if on the very first day of marriage she goes back to her family to complain, the general will be heartbroken." Thinking of my father's bearded, tearful face, a chill ran through me, and I forced down my anger. I nodded to Fu Yunsheng. Satisfied, he left the courtyard. I sent Yunshui out to make the arrangements, instructing her that everything must be 2 grades higher than what Fu Yunsheng demanded. Then I went back to my room and caught up on some sleep. When I opened my eyes again, it was dusk. When I brought the owner of Wenyuan Pavilion to the dining hall, the entire Fu family was already assembled. Even my mother-in-law, who was supposed to be kneeling in the ancestral hall, was there. As usual, the men sat while the women stood. Seeing the long line of servants behind me carrying all sorts of delicacies, Fu Yunzhong straightened his back. "Grandfather, this feast was specially prepared by your granddaughter-in-law to apologize for her rudeness this morning." As dish after dish was brought to the table, the expressions on the Fu family's faces softened from their earlier coldness. After all, a feast from Wenyuan Pavilion is priceless. Even noble families rarely get to taste it. But Minister Fu still snorted with dissatisfaction. Fu Yunsheng quickly shot me a look. "Quick, bring out the luminous pearls for grandfather and father." I turned and called over the foreign merchant holding the tray. The cloth was lifted. 2 luminous pearls, each the size of a baby's head, suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Gasps of amazement rose from the crowd. Even Minister Fu, who prided himself on having seen the world, was stunned for a moment. It took him a good while to react. Finally, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He spoke as if bestowing a favor. "Since you are sincerely repentant, this old man will not hold it against a junior like you. Now, stand behind Yunsheng and serve him his meal." I dodged Fu Yunsheng's hand as he reached to pull me. I said calmly, "Not so fast. Grandfather, you still need to settle the bill with these 2 proprietors." "What money?" "For the banquet and the night luminescent pearl, of course." Fu Yunsheng slams the table. He shoots me a meaningful look. "Wasn't this supposed to be your apology gift to the elders? How can you expect grandfather to pay for it?" I shake my head innocently. "I never said I was going to apologize. The banquet and the pearl were prepared according to your instructions. Why should I be the one to pay?" After saying that, I look up and meet Minister Fu's eyes, burning with suppressed anger. Or is it that the Fu family is broke? On the very first day the new bride enters the household, the whole family wants to live off her. My words make all the Fu men present change their expressions, but I pay no mind. I continue, if you're broke, just say so. Why put on such a rich act? If you really can't come up with 8,000 taels, I can lend it to you. But then I elegantly raise my hand and point at Minister Fu, seated in the center. I smile brightly. I want Minister Fu himself to write me an IOU. Then I'll lend you the money. After hearing my words, the manager of Wenyuan Pavilion quickly steps in with flattery. You jest, madam. The Fu family is a top-tier, century-old noble house in the capital. Minister Fu has served 3 dynasties. How could they possibly fail to pay for a mere banquet? The foreign merchant chimes in right after. High officials are rich and generous. They won't shirk their duties. Now that it's been said, Minister Fu can't possibly lose face. Before ordering someone to fetch money from the treasury, his murky, cold eyes bore into me, as if he wanted to swallow me whole. But I don't care. I just feel my fingers itch. Reminded me of gouging out eyeballs on the battlefield, like they were marbles. After seeing the 2 shopkeepers off, no one was in the mood to eat or drink anymore. After all, 8,000 taels was enough for the Fu family's expenses for half a year. But what did that have to do with me? I plopped myself down in Fu Yunsheng's seat and started helping myself to the delicious food. Fu Yunsheng rushed over, snatched my chopsticks, and slammed them on the table. Shen Jiwei, you better give the money back to grandfather right now. Don't refuse a toast, only to drink a forfeit. Watch me divorce you on our very first day of marriage. I hadn't originally intended to make too big a scene on the first day. I just wanted to teach them a little lesson. But interrupting my meal, that really made my temper flare up in an instant. You give them face, they don't want it. I used all my strength and flipped the table over in one go. The 8,000 tael night pearl and the feast shattered all over the floor. Everyone was horrified. Yu Fu family is so desperate for money, you old coots, constantly eyeing your grandson's wife's money. What? In a hurry to buy your coffins? Don't worry, when you kick the bucket, I'll burn you millions in spirit money. I was in the middle of my tirade and didn't see Fu Yunsheng raising his hand. He slapped me hard across the face. He put all his strength into it. My head snapped to the side. Before Yun Shui could rush over to stop him, I grabbed Fu Yunsheng. Crack, crack, dislocating all 4 of his limbs. Perhaps it all happened too fast. The Fu family was completely stunned. I lifted Fu Yunsheng, limp as a rag doll, and threw him into the pond in the courtyard. I wouldn't let anyone save him. Just before he was about to drown, I'd haul him out, then throw him back in to drown again. I repeated this 4 or 5 times. Fu Yunsheng was already unconscious. I straddled him and slapped him a dozen times hard to wake him up. Then I asked him kindly, still want to spar with me? Fu Yunsheng shook his head, spitting. Then he passed out again. I took another look at the Fu family. What about you? Anyone else disagree and want to fight me? No one answered. I stood up and took the handkerchief Yun Shui handed me, gracefully wiped my hands, then walked up to Minister Fu, put on a gentle, virtuous smile. Grandfather, does grandfather need his granddaughter-in-law to learn the Fu family rules in the ancestral hall? Minister Fu stared at me in disbelief, hand over his heart. In-laws who don't listen are probably just spoiled. A good beating will fix that. On the 3rd day, the day I returned to my parents' home, Fu Yunsheng still couldn't get out of bed. I didn't mind and went back to the general's mansion by myself. From a distance, I saw my parents personally standing at the gate to welcome me. But when they saw only me getting off the carriage, their faces fell. My mother roughly dragged me into the mansion. My father closed the door right behind us, then grabbed a spiked club from the wall and swung it at me. I sidestepped to dodge it. Immediately, my mother's silver spear thrust straight at me from behind, yelling angrily, "Did you beat him so badly he can't get out of bed?" I casually caught the long whip Yun Shui threw to me and started fighting with my parents. Didn't explain a thing. After all, I really wanted a good fight. To stretch my limbs, the sparring was in full swing. The noise outside the door alerted the neighbors. Minister Fu stood outside the gate with his son. My father glared at me fiercely. Then he and my mother put on a smile and went to greet them. His gaze fell on the stretcher, with Fu Yunsheng unconscious on it. His expression froze, then tentatively asked if his son-in-law had fallen and hit his head. Fu Yunsheng's father spoke first. His voice was so loud, everyone heard clearly. The Shen family committed marriage fraud. The 20-mile dowry from the Shen family is completely fake, and Shen Jiwei is nothing but a gold digger. On the very first day of the wedding, she cried and demanded the finest banquet from Wenyuan Pavilion. She even forced her in-laws to buy a night pearl worth 5,000 taels. This alley is home to officials of the 2nd rank and above in the court. They had all sent their young gentlemen to meet me for arranged marriages, but I turned them all down, so they all resent me for my poor judgment and envy the Fu family for getting such a bargain. But today, as soon as they heard my dowry was fake and that I'm a gold digger, they all started gloating. Their words were dripping with sarcasm and mockery. Acting rich when you're broke? I bet those 20 miles of dowry were just empty boxes. She finally married into a wealthy family, so she couldn't hide her true colors for even a day. Rushing to live the high life, a country bumpkin trying to become a phoenix. Seeing all the neighbors siding with them, Fu Yunsheng's father turned on the waterworks. With tears in his eyes, he lamented, "My father is the minister of rights, but he's always been honest and upright. His monthly salary is just enough to support our large family. Now, on the very first day this new bride enters our home, she's already spent a full 8,000 taels. How is our Fu family supposed to survive? I beg you, mighty general, in light of our families now being related by marriage, to return the money to us." After saying this, he started to kneel, his eyes constantly darting toward my parents, waiting for them to stop him so he could stand back up. But my parents completely ignored him. Instead, they looked toward Minister Fu. My father asked sternly, "Are you certain my daughter demanded the Wenyuan Pavilion banquet?" My mother frowned. "Are you certain my daughter insisted on having the night pearl?" Before the Fu family could respond, a neighbor spoke up. "The Fu family is a century-old noble house. Minister Fu is a respected elder who served 3 reigns. He has an excellent reputation at court. Why would he cheat you? Those 8,000 taels. You should just return the money to them. This isn't the borderlands. Drop that stingy, low-class attitude." Hearing someone speak up for him, Minister Fu wore a smug smile. He put on airs, brushing off non-existent dust from his clothes. Then he assumed the airs of an elder and began lecturing my parents. "General Shen, your daughter is not only a spendthrift, she's also a domestic abuser. On the very first day of the marriage, she insulted her elders and assaulted her husband. Even if my grandson did slap her once, Shen Jiwei shouldn't have dislocated his arms and legs. A wife must obey her husband." He was about to launch into another long lecture when my father cut him off with a furious roar. "What? He hit my daughter? Which hand did he use? I'll chop it off." My mother pointed at Minister Fu and my father-in-law and said, "Chop off theirs too. A child's fault is the father's failure. And the grandfather's too." Minister Fu thought my parents would be like other status-conscious noble families in the capital, who would swallow their pride to keep the peace. Then they'd admonish their daughter to obey her husband, for the husband is the sky. She must be filial to her in-laws, and attentive to her husband. Otherwise, even if she returns to her parents' home, she'd be driven out. A married daughter is like spilled water. Her parents' home is no longer her home, and her in-laws' home isn't either. She'd live like a puppet with no dignity, like old Madame Fu, or my mother-in-law. But the Fu family miscalculated. My parents can hit me, but if anyone else dares lay a finger on me, they'll turn into rabid dogs on the wrong medicine and tear that person to shreds. My father went to the kitchen for a cleaver. He charged out, ready to chop off Fu Yunsheng's hand. Minister Fu and my father-in-law hurried to stop him. The Fu family servants also swarmed in to cling to his legs. Meanwhile, my mother took advantage of the chaos and ran to the stretcher. She rolled up the sleeve of the still unconscious Fu Yunsheng, revealing his pale, tender arm. She yelled to my father, "Hurry up, I've got it all ready for you. Chop this hand." Hearing that, my father got even more fired up. Summoning all his strength, he broke free from the Fu family's hold. He raised the cleaver and charged toward my mother. I quickly rushed forward to stop him. I stood in front of the stretcher. It wasn't that I felt sorry for Fu Yunsheng's hand. It was because our family had finally used the pretext of requesting an imperial marriage for me to hand over the tiger tally. We cleared ourselves of the emperor's suspicion of being too powerful and plotting rebellion. Me beating up Fu Yunsheng is a domestic matter between us spouses. Even the Son of Heaven can't interfere. But if my father chops off his hand, he could be charged with harming a court official. I snatched the cleaver away and flung it. It stuck firmly in the ground right in front of my father-in-law. The repeated shocks were too much for him. He fainted on the spot. I shot a defiant look at Minister Fu. Just then, the manager of Wenyuan Ji arrived with the restaurant's chef. They stood respectfully before me. "Miss Biao, this is the chef who came to the residence to cook today." As soon as he finished speaking, someone in the crowd exclaimed, "Isn't that the most famous chef from Wenyuan Go? Even His Majesty has visited incognito just to taste his dishes. Why would he come to the Shen family?" Someone next to him said, "Really? This chef has been coming to the Shen residence every afternoon to cook lately." Another person chimed in, "The Shen family eats at Wenyuan Go every day? Why would they force the Fu family to buy it for them? Maybe the Fu family wanted to eat it themselves and pinned the bill on the new bride? Maybe Miss Shen was deliberately making things difficult for the Fu family. Even if the banquet makes sense, what about the 5,000 tael night luminescent pearl? Didn't she insist on having it? She's just some uncultured borderlander. Seeing a night-luminescent pearl, she probably threw a fit to force the Fu family to buy it. Hearing someone in the crowd back him up, Minister Fu straightened his back. He looked utterly confident of victory. I gave a slight smile. I had the servants I'd prepared earlier bring out 3 large chests from the mansion. Then, I opened them in front of everyone. Even in broad daylight, the light radiating from inside the chests was unmistakable. 3 whole chests of night pearls. Instantly, everyone gasped in shock. You've messed with the wrong family. I thought that by presenting this evidence, I could prove I didn't care for those things at all. That the Fu family was lying. That they were slandering me. But I had sorely underestimated the shamelessness of this 3-dynasty veteran. He pointed at the 3 large chests, revealing a sinister grin. Your Shen family has been secretly hoarding so many priceless night pearls. You kept it hidden and didn't report it. You must have treacherous intentions. I, as an official, will confiscate all of this now and report it to His Majesty. After saying that, he even walked closer to me and whispered a sinister threat. Shen Jue, for how you beat my grandson, I will crush your Shen family under my heel. Old Fu ordered his servants to take the chests away. The Fu family members swarmed forward. Just as they lifted the chest in front of me, I stepped my foot on the lid. The chest fell back down with a thud. Shen Jue, these are items I'm reporting to His Majesty. How dare you interfere? Does your Shen family intend to rebel? Old Fu deliberately raised his voice, trying to incite the onlookers. He wanted to use public opinion to pin this fabricated crime on our Shen family. I raised an eyebrow and sneered. Minister Fu, are you aware that those who plot rebellion face execution of their entire clan? That's what your Shen family deserves. My father kindly reminded him, now that we're in-laws, your Fu family is also within those 9 clans. Old Fu, it just goes to show how stupid and wicked this man is. I reopened the chest. I took out one of the night luminous pearls to show everyone. 10 years ago, my parents were fighting the enemy at the border. My father was slashed multiple times. He fell unconscious. My mother led the troops in a grueling battle for 3 days and nights. Only then did they repel the enemy. This night luminous pearl was a reward from His Majesty at the time. Every single pearl in here represents a victory my parents won. It represents my Shen family guarding the borders of Great Liang. I met Old Fu's stunned gaze and questioned Minister Fu. Are you planning to take my Shen family's illustrious military achievements and use them to sow discord before His Majesty? Do you want a wise ruler like His Majesty to listen to the slander of a treacherous official like you and turn against his loyal generals? Do you intend to make His Majesty act unjustly? After my impassioned speech, Old Fu's face turned from red to black, and finally, deathly pale. His legs gave way. He collapsed to the ground in terror. The crowd that had just been mocking and ridiculing the Shen family also fell silent, not daring to utter another word. They scurried back to their homes in a flash, afraid that if they were a step too late, I'd label them as treacherous officials, too. With that, this farce finally came to an end. After driving away the Fu family and their entourage, my parents asked if I wanted to divorce Fu Yuncheng. I shook my head. In this world, a woman must marry eventually. If not the Fu family, it would be another. If I don't stay in the capital, His Majesty will never truly be at ease. That evening, after dinner, I had a satisfying sparring session with my parents. Then I swaggered back to the Fu residence. This time, the entire Fu household came out to greet me. Even the unconscious Fu Yunzheng was forcibly shaken awake. Satisfied, I patted Old Fu on the shoulder and remarked, Minister Fu, you've really grown. He turned pale, but I still wasn't going to let him off the hook. Before returning to the courtyard, I gave him some bad news. Every word you said today in front of the general's mansion, my father will report to His Majesty tomorrow. You'll probably be demoted. I sighed with feigned pity. Will you be punished to guard the imperial tombs, or to tend to the stables? After saying that, I turned and went back into the courtyard. I slept soundly that night and woke up late the next morning. The first thing I did upon waking was ask Yunshui, what was Old Fu demoted to? He tried to tease me. One good news. One bad news. Which one do you want to hear first, miss? The bad one? Minister Fu wasn't demoted. I frowned. And the good one? He had a stroke last night. Now his face is twisted, and he's drooling, and he walks with a limp. Old Fu's public reputation in his later years is preserved, but his dignity within the family is gone. Not just his dignity, but the dignity of all the Fu men. It started during dinner, when I saw Madame Fu feeding porridge to Old Fu, whose mouth was crooked. She accidentally spilled a drop on his robe. Old Fu, trembling on one side from the stroke, still managed to show off his domestic tyranny. With a shaking hand, he slapped Madame Fu. My father-in-law, who's also a domestic tyrant, complained, Mother, you can't even feed him properly. The Fu family has wasted all these years raising you. How can I, your son, trust you to take care of father? Madame Fu's eyes reddened at his words. She lowered her head, wiping away tears in grievance. I chimed in between bites. If you don't trust her, take care of him yourself. As the saying goes, a dutiful son is hard to find by a sick parent's bedside. Father-in-law, now's your chance to show your filial piety. I snatched the bowl of porridge from Madame Fu's hands and shoved it into father-in-law's hands. From now on, you'll handle all the feeding, washing, and emptying the chamber pot. That way, you won't have to worry about anyone else doing it. Without waiting for a response, I had the servants bring in chairs and invited all the women of the Fu family to sit and eat. The Fu men were displeased. When men are eating, what place do women have at the table? I slammed the table. The sturdy pearwood table instantly cracked. I scanned the room. May we sit at the table now? Everyone nodded. From that day on, the Fu men lost their backing at court. Previously, the entire Fu family relied on Fu Laoding to pave their way in officialdom. But now he's gravely ill, and because he offended my family, the court officials naturally stopped giving these two any regard. They didn't dare vent their anger on me, so they blamed Fu Laoding for ever crossing me in the first place. When the fishermen profited, they reaped the benefits. Now that the army's in disarray, they just complained to the heavens. As for me, I assigned each woman a highly skilled personal maid for protection. This prevented them from beating their wives to vent their frustrations. In less than half a month, the Fu men, who prided themselves on nobility and integrity, stormed into Fu Laoding's courtyard. This happened at night. As Fu Yunzheng was drying my wet hair, he told me. He sighed. Especially father, who faced exclusion from colleagues during the day, then came home to attend to grandfather's every need. I heard just now, when the uncles barged into the courtyard demanding to divide the family. Their words were so harsh that grandfather fainted from anger again, and my father never stopped me from start to finish. My hair is almost dry. I got up and got a fresh towel. I pushed Fu Yunzheng down to sit on a chair. Then, mimicking his actions, I gently dried his wet hair. This is something I forced him to do with me every night after he woke up from his coma. He was unwilling at first. Stiffening his neck, he kept spouting nonsense about how men from wealthy families are supreme, saying that even if they should never serve women. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. I just reached out towards him. He thought I was going to hit him again. He was so scared he crouched down and covered his head. I rolled my eyes in disdain. Then I yanked him up and took him out of the mansion to the Shen family. It was already dark by then. When I barged into my parents' courtyard, I gave the old couple a fright, especially my father. He was testing the water temperature for my mother's foot bath, but because of my sudden intrusion, he pushed my mother's foot right into the water. Angered, my mother kicked him flying. If I hadn't stopped her, he probably wouldn't have escaped a beating. After calming my mother down, I turned to meet Fu Yunzheng's shocked gaze. You Fu men think you're so noble, but at most you're only a third-rank official. I patted my father's shoulder. My father, the mighty general, was just in Fef this morning as the dynasty's only non-imperial surname prince. Yet he still washes his wife's feet, dries her hair, and warms her bed every day. What kind of bullshit are you Fu men putting on? I walked up to Fu Yunzheng and kindly reminded him, if you insist on clinging to that bullshit dignity of a wealthy man, I wouldn't mind having a husband with disabled hands. Fu Yunzheng can still be saved. He's not like his father, who's rotten to the core. At least, after 18 years in this family that treats women like ants, he doesn't have a bed-warming maid. His nervousness and shyness when he first met me were genuine. His awkwardness and panic on our wedding night were also real. So I don't want to spend the next few decades using violence to suppress violence. After all, prolonged repression might lead to a desperate, mutually destructive revenge. So if he behaves, I'll give him a little reward. If he acts up again, I'll just slap him. A second marriage isn't out of the question. As for the other men of the Fu family, they've probably already been taken away by the capital prefect, because my mother-in-law and old Madame Fu jointly filed a complaint accusing them of being unfilial sons, attempting to coerce their elderly father, and plotting murder for money. And old man Fu, who's had a stroke and is incontinent, was also carried by them to the gates of the capital prefecture. No matter how he slurs his insults and curses, it can't shake old Madame Fu's determination to seek justice for him. Old Madame Fu wailed loudly in front of the yamen, my husband is Fu Nanchong, Minister of Rights. Now his mouth is crooked, his eyes are askew, and he's incontinent. But his sons and nephews beat and curse him, calling him an old bastard. I beg your honor to uphold justice for Fu Nanchong. I'm afraid before dawn tomorrow, the Fu family scandal will have spread throughout the entire capital. Ah, the Fu family's last fig leaf has been torn off. TSK, it wasn't me who instigated mother-in-law and old Madame Fu. It wasn't me.